So thank you very much, Michele. I'm, of course, very happy to be here, even though the public is not as large as usually. It's now a tradition for me to speak at the Space Forum, and so I have been asked to go a bit beyond what the topic of this afternoon is and give you somehow news about what happened in Luxembourg over the last few months since the last edition of the Space Forum. So just to put that again in the context and give you or recall the missions that we have, you have to remember that what we do in Luxembourg is something that is really driven by the diversification of the economy. This is what we are pursuing, what we contribute to at the agency. And to do that, we start first by helping all the companies to develop and grow into the space sector. So secondly, we also want to address that from a broader perspective. And so it's not only about the companies, or it's always about the companies, but developing the ecosystem from its the different angles is something that we do here in Luxembourg as well. And one of the very important elements is the talents. Talents is fundamental for the development of the sector, so we have put that at the core of our missions. And last but not least, we remain a small country, but space goes beyond the borders, so we have also a very, very intense international engagement. So if I start now with what happened in 2019, those who are more familiar with the European Space Agency know that this was a particular year with the Ministerial Council of ESA, Space 19+. And this year is also very particular for us because this is the opportunity to go deeper into the understanding of what our companies do. And we have done a very vast consultation of all the players in Luxembourg with a view to define in more details in which type of programs of ESA we should contribute to. So, and that exercise led to what we call our National Action Plan for the period 2020-2024, of which you can find as well an exemplar in French and in English on our website if you're interested to know more. And that document presents what we have done since the last Ministerial Council, and that was in 2016. And the proposal for the future. I think this is what, of course, is important. This is conditioning our investments for the next few years. It has been adopted by the government, so it's something that we are not only developing in our corner on the offices of the LSA. It's really something that here is showing what the ambitions of the country are. And Space 19+ was a great success. I think it collected a remarkable level of financial contributions and what is as well showing the level of interest of the member states of the agency for this thematic. So that was a great event as well for Luxembourg. For Luxembourg, this is the occasion to come with fresh money to support the development of this sector. And here, I would say this is not a surprise. We still have focused our investments on applications. This is where you will have the first economic activities that will happen. And so about 70% of our means that we devoted to space programs in the ESA are devoted to applications. Also, a remarkable fact for Luxembourg is that that's the first time that we have contributed to the exploration program of the agency, which is, of course, an event for Luxembourg, and there is, of course, a link with very important activities in Luxembourg, but this is certainly something to be noticed as well. It's also where we have announced a cooperation with the European Space Agency to create the European Space Resources Innovation Center, on which I will come back later on. So, and then we came in 2020, and I think you will certainly have the same opinion. 2020 is a bit a particular year, I think, for all of us, not only for COVID. 2020 was, for us, First of all, the change of minister. So those of you who are following also this in Luxembourg have learned that our previous minister now retired from his politics career, and the new minister now entered into his functions. And of course, the question that comes, does that change something for the policy in Luxembourg? It does not. In fact, it's reinforcing what we have done over the last years. And for those who had the opportunity to listen to him yesterday, I'm sure they are now convinced that space is as important for him as for the others. And I also usually say that here it's not only the question of one person. All what we do generally is really supported by the entire government. So space is an ambition of the country and not only of one or the other person. 2020 is also the 15th anniversary of Luxembourg as a member state of the European Space Agency. And I can tell you a lot has changed since these days. Just to give you a flavor, when we started, we were talking with a handful of companies about what they could do in the frame of ESA programs first, and then, of course, on the commercial market. And now we have a space directory that counts 53 companies and 7 labs that are active in space. So coming exactly on the space directory, we have now edited this year in June the 2020 edition. So for those who are interested also to know more about the precise activities that are done here in Luxembourg, they can consult the catalog. I think that will be very instructive. So, and then of course, I think I have to say a word about the crisis that we are all in. It had also an impact on the space sector. What we have seen in the companies that are active here in space is there were delays in the acquisition of contracts. I think the fact that the customers somehow were themselves impacted in their activities, of course, had a direct impact on the supply chain. Our companies as well had sometimes difficulties to supply their material. There were delays at that level as well. And of course, the availability of the personnel, I think, did not necessarily make the things easy, at least in the beginning. I suppose that as we are now, a lot of people have just taken the use also to work through video conference or from home. But in March, it was not necessarily as easy. So we have also been touched somehow by the COVID, I mean, as agency. And I would say that the main aspect where we have been hampered in our activities is, of course, our international engagement. So we were used to be traveling very often around the world to talk to our partners. And since March, we have stayed here in Luxembourg. And even the use of video conferencing is not an easy thing from that perspective. So the other big impact that it had is, of course, the postponement of a few flagship events that we had. So gratefully, Space Forum has just been delayed a little bit, and this very innovative way to make it happen is, of course, very appreciated. But we decided for the new Space Europe event just to postpone it by 1 year. So it will take place in 2021 on the 24th of November. Another very important event that we had to postpone is the Space Resources Week, for which we have not yet defined the precise date, but it will certainly take place in the first or second quarter next year. So now coming on more concrete progresses, I think despite the difficulties we have encountered and despite the difficulties the companies have encountered, we have done our utmost to continue supporting them. And I would say it was more important than ever, considering the situation. And I just want here to make a small word for ESA. I think in all this process, even though sometimes ESA is a bit is maybe criticized for is its bureaucracy. I believe here in this situation, ESA made a fantastic job, was extremely reactive in supporting the companies in these difficult times. So, company support, I think we have never seen any decrease of interest for Luxembourg, I must say, despite this situation. And so we are extremely busy still working with the companies. A topic that enters nicely within the discussion this afternoon is our LSA data center. We are very proud to announce now that we have the whole set of data for Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 here in Luxembourg with the full history. And so this is, of course, very interesting for all the people who, from a scientific perspective or commercial perspective, want to develop services based on Earth observation data. So we have continued as well on the education part. On the primary and secondary, we support the training of teachers so that they can use space as a tool inside their classes to educate the kids. Last year, we announced a cooperation with the University of Luxembourg for an interdisciplinary space master, which is now entering in its second year. And we recently started the selection of our Luxembourg young graduate trainees who will have the opportunity to work at ESA. On the investment side as well, we stayed very active. I think this is an extremely important dimension in which we have invested a lot of efforts over the last years. And we recently created a newsletter so that we can regularly inform the investment community about the opportunities to invest in Luxembourgish companies. On the regulatory aspect, we have been in charge now since 2018 of the national legislation. And there is now a project or proposal for a law in Luxembourg to authorize all the activities in space. And this is something now that is in the process, and we are all crossing fingers that this law will pass the plenary session of the Parliament before the end of the year. Last but not least is our Space Resources Initiative, which is, of course, a flagship of the agency and of the country. And as I said before, we announced this cooperation with ESA at the occasion of Space 19+. But recently, we also announced that we would do that on national level with the Luxembourg Institute for Science and Technology. And we have here a very ambitious objective to have it running before the end of the year. And also in that context, I think it's important to note that I said that we were hampered with our international engagement, but nevertheless, we have engaged now with NASA to investigate where Luxembourg could make a contribution to the Artemis program. And I think this is also a very important element in our activities. So, maybe to conclude, I'd like also to invite those who want to have a contact with LSA to try our virtual booth. We have a virtual booth at this occasion here, and there are people there that are ready to answer your questions and help you find your way through Luxembourg. Follow us regularly on our website and the media channels so that you can follow all the news that happen here. And of course, Michele, I wish you the best now for this last session of the Space Forum. Thank you very much.